I'm going again.
His biggest strength is his greatest weakness. He's always climbing.
In this video, I'm gonna go over how to be a dynamic climber. Let's get started. To break down trying to be a little bit more dynamic, there's basically two motions where climbers are dynamic. The first one is more of a straight up motion, and the second one is more of a sideways motion. The first one we're gonna go over is the straight up motion. And when it comes to the straight up motion, there's two variations. The first variation, going straight up. The second one, kind of like a pendulum swing to the side. Let's break it down. Before we begin, we need to understand that when it comes to climbing, anytime we're onto the wall is always trying to push us backwards, which means when we're trying to go up in a dynamic fashion, we need to remember that if all we simply do is pull vertically upwards, then as we pull vertically just upwards, the wall is gonna push us backwards. Here's how it looks like in full action. If I just try to pull myself upwards, going for that purple hold, going just purely upwards, my hips will get thrown out to the side. Instead, what we want to do is we want to apply a rowing action by taking the hold and pulling it towards us. Since we know that our body is constantly falling backwards, and if we simply just pull up, all that's gonna do is make us fall backwards and backwards even more. And to counter it out, we're gonna pull ourselves into the wall. Using this good example, as I'm here, I'm gonna pull myself into the wall. And as you notice, when I pull myself into the wall, I'm gonna get that moment of dead time where my body's completely still. But if I was just to pull straight up, one more time, now my body just flies backwards. So let's apply that onto the example. Allow me to totally exaggerate what this will look like as I'm pulling in and I'm shooting up for that purple hold. From here, yeah, let's go here. Pulling in. Now, as you saw, I really pulled in. What happens if I just pull straight up? Let's see what that will look like. Just straight up. Now, of course, even though my hand was obviously hovering there, and if I slammed it down, I probably wouldn't be able to caught it. But the bad thing is that my hips were out, and when I catch it, things would have cut loose, and I would have swung backwards, which is not something I'm willing to put myself through at risk of a shoulder bobber. And that little pulling in motion is arguably 99% of how to perform a good dyno. But there is something else. That something else is having the belief that you're able to stand up. Even though you might think of being dynamic as a big wumbo jump, a lot of times being dynamic just really means to fully utilize your entire reach. This right here is a piece of chalk. And when I go up, I'm gonna utilize my full height. I'm not even gonna get off of this volume. I'm just gonna mark it. Now, as you can see from the ground all the way to the top where I ended up, using the power of this volume without actually jumping up for it, I was able to make a great fair amount of distance. Most problems, especially this set indoors, will only really require you to just expand to your full height. Just for a fun little example, I'm gonna jump up and try and mark it as high as I can. And sure, obviously, I got a little bit higher, but the control wasn't as great, the fall not as fun, and overall, before we can be confident with jumping, we should be confident with just the ability to fully extend. I'm sure you already understand that being a taller climber makes doing these bigger dynamic moves a lot easier, and 9 times out of 10, it's simply because they're standing using their full height. And even if you're shorter, you also need to stand and use your full height. It'll make it easier. The second form of being dynamic and using that momentum in terms of the straightforward facing the wall type is one where we're not really changing the position of the hips. With the first one, we wanted to start out far and then bring it towards the wall. For this one, we basically just want to keep the hips more or less the same, because our movement pattern and the way we're going to generate momentum is by moving our hips from one side to the other side and then up. This is very useful for when you're going to kind of like a side pull that's high, by moving your hips from here to here and then slamming it to the side. So you didn't know this, holds are best held at a perpendicular angle. Like for example, if this is flat, it's best held like this at a perpendicular angle. And if we look at, say, this side pole over here, this side pole is best held at a particular angle, just like that. Therefore, if we're going into a side pole that's high above us, like for example, this red hole, I know it's not super side poly, but that's because I'm tired, but let's assume this is more side poly, then how we want to hit it is from a direct side pole angle. Here's a slightly poor example because I'm not my friend. So, but what it's gonna look like is this. Hopefully you understood the concept there. Let me explain it a little bit more. Sometimes you might not be able to have the ability to simply just pole in because of the climb. So in that situation, what you want to do is instead of poling in, we want to use that hip swinging out to the side method to generate momentum to bring ourselves up. With the first method, that is completely straight on, the way your hips will go is typically gonna be backwards, like that. And then with the second method, because we're coming from a side point of view, the way your hips are gonna move is to the side like that, and then you're gonna have to control the momentum that way. Which one is better? Try both, depending on the situation. Either or could be better. When it comes to sideways dynamic moves, there's generally two ways to do it. Let us begin with the pendulum. The pendulum action, if we take a look at the wall, we must remember that the wall is constantly trying to spit us off no matter what. Therefore, when we pendulum, we're gonna start in this extended position. To build up momentum, we're gonna bring our hips close to the wall. As we swing back out, we're gonna bring the hips far out from the wall. Not necessarily as far as you can, that might throw you off balance, but just far enough to know that you have space to go into the wall. Once we're here, taking our arms, our hands, we're gonna move our hips towards this wall. Now, we're not gonna simply slam our body straight into the wall. If we do that, we're just gonna lose all the momentum we built up. We want it to carry ourselves through the whole motion. So from here, we're gonna just whoop, 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 and hope it carries us all the way through. I will try to demonstrate, but know if I fall, it's because I'm not a big fan of dynamics. That was close enough. The second method, the straight shot arrow method, again, using the wall, we have to take our hips away from the wall because we're trying to go into the wall to prevent that fight from us falling off of the wall. As we do remember. Good. From here, instead of really trying to build up momentum by swinging our body, what we're really gonna do here is we're gonna take one leg, generally one leg, one arm, both arms and one leg, whatever, right? We're gonna generate momentum. We're gonna kick it backwards, keep our hips far from the wall. From here, we're just gonna kick all our momentum, thrust ourselves in a direct straight line for the finish hold. And hopefully, with enough force and practice, we get ourselves to the hold. I too shall try to demonstrate this, but remember, I'm not necessarily the best dynamic climber. You might be wondering which one is better for whichever situation. And the answer is, you really just gotta test it out for yourself. The arrow method could work, the pendulum method could work. It's really all about a great deal of commitment. Speaking of commitment, and now that you basically know how to be a little bit dynamic with your movement, we need to talk about how to build up that commitment and that confidence. Let's begin. We are going to take this orange sideways coordination climb as the example. First things first, to help build confidence is we gotta touch the last hold. We gotta grab it. Once we're able to grab it, be comfortable on it, it's important that we practice moving, feeling uncomfortable, and getting into kind of like funny positions that you could possibly get into when, you grab it too viciously and you might fall off. This means, let's assume this is the hold we're going to. This means that we can't just practice holding it with the perfect grip. We need to practice holding it with an unoptimal grip, a really awful grip, and a totally not even close to the hold type of grip. What that's just gonna do is, if we could hold it horribly, then we know we could hold it decently with a little bit added momentum. Luckily for us, this is broken down to basically 3 sections. Start, middle, end. We don't need to do the whole problem in one sequence. It's best that we build confidence just going to the middle. Observe, if I just want to do this confidently, going to the middle, that is nice, that is smooth. I have great confidence. I know that all I'm trying to do is get here. But let's say I try to go all the way there and I psych myself out because all I'm focusing on is there. I'm gonna miss the important middle step, in which case I might just, And since I'm a smart human being and I practice being confident going to the middle, feeling that dead point, that weightlessness where I just chill and then I fall off of practice, now I have it inside my head that I'm gonna go for the finish hole. But I'm not gonna fully commit to the grab yet. I'm just gonna touch it. So by doing the whole motion and simply touching it, even though let's say you can totally grab it, we're teaching our body that, hey, I could get here, I could touch it with some form of control, and I don't need to fully commit to it. Therefore, that's just gonna help build more and more confidence until you're finally ultimately ready to just let's go over some things that you don't want to do when you try to be dynamic, right? First things first is we don't really want to have this constant pumping action, right? That's just going to really tire us out. What I like to do, and really helps me sometimes, is I'll start further from the wall. And I'll just, what stays in motion, goes in motion, you know what I mean? I'll go 1 solid step, 2 solid step, 3 solid step, solid step, solid step, 1 pump. Go. You will be surprised at how starting with initial momentum will actually help calm you a little bit for the first move that is dynamic. Try it. This next step is kind of weird. It seems like it shouldn't work, but if you're pulling really hard and you can't manage to get the catch, do the opposite and try to pull as little as necessary. You'll be surprised that for some climbs, pulling with a lot of strength will only hurt you, and pulling with just the minimum amount, almost too low amount of strength, will actually be a lot smoother, allowing you to get the catch. Tip number 3 is speed. Sometimes, just because the move is far away and seems really difficult to get to, if you try to go into it too quickly, it might not prove to great fruition. For example, if I try to go into the purple super hard and fast as I can, right? What actually happens is I end up overshooting it and I'm in a way worse position, as opposed to just going nice, slow, and steady. Nice, slow, steady, and I'm not gonna try to go too hard. Look at that. Speed is just a technique, a weapon, tool that you should use and utilize and change it up in order to hit the hold optimally. That was how to climb dynamically. If you like what you saw, like, comment, subscribe. I highly suggest you subscribe. I drop videos like this more or less almost every single day, and hopefully it helps you. Cool.